Thank you for listening and supporting the Daily Memphian. Sign up for one of our many free newsletters and breaking news alerts at dailymemphian.com/email to receive the latest local news stories impacting our community. Our weekly newsletters cover everything from sports to arts and culture, business, food, and more, along with daily updates of all the news we publish each day. Sign up or manage your email preferences at dailymemphian.com/email.
I'm Bill Drees with the Daily Memphian, joined right now by Memphis City Council member Michalyn Easter Thomas, and this is On the Record. We record Tuesday, January 31st, 2023, an off week for the council in terms of meetings. We're here to talk about the various police reform proposals that the council started to discuss in January 24th committee sessions. This interview is part of our story on those proposals. Counselor, you have a list of proposals, and right at the top, I want to get to one that I don't think the council discussed in 2020 after the death of George Floyd in Minneapolis police custody. This is a driving equality ordinance that is in place in Philadelphia that has 8 vehicle violations that are not to be enforced by police with a traffic stop. They are, just run through them real quick here, late registration within 6 months, 1 brake light out, expired stickers for inspections and emissions, which may be a moot point since Memphis has neither at this point. Minor bumper issues, items hanging from the rearview mirror, relocation of a license plate, and relocation of temporary registration. So tell me more about that and how you think that would work here in Memphis.
Yes. So, I mean, we don't know how it would work here, but we do know that when things are pushed out, they just have to be done efficiently and with fidelity and with the support that they need to make a difference. And so, of course, anything put forth would be in sort of a pilot-esque sense, but really seeing if it makes a change that we want to see for pretextual traffic stops. And this has been done in Philadelphia, and I have been in communication with the council member there, and they've seen good turnout from pushing it forth. And I will also say that there are local organizers who have been asking council members to consider different ordinances and policies surrounding traffic. A couple months ago, I think in December, we had the group Decarcerate Memphis come by my request and give a presentation about traffic stop data in Memphis. And those figures were alarming. And I think that really set a foundation with the council. And now that we're dealing with the aftermath of the unfortunate killing of Mr. Nichols, I think that it's a good time to go ahead and put some of these things in place.
And the Decarcerate presentation was before the traffic stop involving Mr. Nichols, right?
Yes, it was last year.
How much information have you all gotten about traffic stops? Because Chief Davis has, I believe, a monthly briefing that she or her staff does with the council.
Yes, and we get our typical numbers and data points, but what we don't get, and this can either be because we're not asking specifically or it's not given directly, but what we're not getting is how much of a difference not stopping individuals in Memphis for these items would make on the court system, would make on citizens, would make on our communities and our neighborhoods, and would really free up police officers to do things in their community or something else, responding to other things around the city.
Right. And this seems to me to be kind of the other side of a discussion that the council has had about reckless driving and about illegal drag racing. So I would imagine it's hard to predict, but I would imagine there might be quite the discussion among council members about this.
Oh, yes. And I think that this is, the start of a real in-depth, deep dive discussion on looking at police practices that not only are pushing the safety and compassion for citizens, but that are also pushing efficiency and the best use of employees.
Okay. Some of the other ideas on the list for discussion next week are ideas that the council considered back in 2020 after the George Floyd incident. Tell me about those and where you think those proposals are now, almost 3 years later.
I think that revisiting, well, one, we also passed in 2020 the 8 Can't Wait, along with other metropolitan cities, and the police department since then has ensured us that a lot of those efforts were implemented, as well as the recommendations that came out of the police safety recruitment and training ad hoc committee led by Councilwoman Logan. Those items, not all of them, but a good portion of them out, Chief Davis said that those were implemented as well. And that's found on the Reimagining MPD website through by way of the city. But the other things that I'm producing, I'm supporting the data transparency ordinance. And Bill, you know this as well as anyone. Anything we put forth in the resolution is just a recommendation to the administration. And so nothing is enforceable truly unless it is an ordinance. So we're just wanting to make sure that we're clear as a council, that I believe that's the spirit of this, that Councilman Smiley is bringing back up. We just want to make sure we're clear as a council that this is something that we want and we want to have updated, and we want to make sure that it's current and that folks can access it as they will. Also on that list, the Healthy Workplace Act with Councilwoman Logan. Since then, someone has said that HR already has some of this implemented. So actually what that will be on the council agenda is bringing HR Chief Smith to discuss how anti-bullying is present within our employee system, and especially the police, within the police officers, to really see, is it an environment in where if your colleague is doing wrong, can you intervene without backlash? Right. And that's really where the spirit of that act is coming from. And then also community coax. This is just something that everybody has been asking for, especially my constituents, to return back to the inner city. I was talking with some individuals who were from East Memphis originally, and they said they never heard of them. But my constituents in North Memphis, and definitely the ones in South Memphis and Westwood, they remember community coax. They remember better relationships with police officers and having them embedded into the grains of what goes on day to day in our neighborhoods. And so really revisiting that to see what's a price number on that. How can we fully implement it, at least in a couple areas across the city? And how can it really improve the trust and relationship between the community and police officers? Because I think we can safely say that this incident, this unfortunate killing of Tyree Nichols, has probably placed a strain on the future relations between Memphians and the police department.
And the COACT units, to be clear, are basically community policing. You have a substation that is in a community, and these have been there in the past before they were discontinued. But the officers at that location, their job is to get to know the community better. They might not, they're not there to respond to the flood of calls that come in unless they're really needed to, but their job is primarily to build a relationship with the people around that substation.
Exactly, because people make neighborhoods safe. Police don't make neighborhoods safe. They're first responders, but people make neighborhoods safe. So if we can find better ways for people to work alongside the police, then we probably have a good recipe for success and progress in the city in the future.
Going back to the workplace ordinance or resolution that you're going to hear from Chief Smith about in HR in council committees, do you think that there is a disconnect between the training that police officers receive, which there's been so much emphasis on that training? Do you think there's a disconnect between that and what happens when those officers get out of the academy and get on the street and start working with other police officers who are more experienced, who say, well, I know what you learned in the academy, I learned it too, but this is the way it's really done?
Yes, I think it's safe to say that. And I think also what we have to ask of Chief Davis is, where does training end? And I'm an educator, Bill, so we're trained often
Mm-hmm.
throughout the year, constantly, and sometimes on the same topics and subtopics. And so that same offering can be applied to our first responders in the city. If you're constantly engaging with a changing and shifting population, training that you received years ago shouldn't still hold true to a situation that's in the now. And the police officers that are charged with the killing of Mr. Nichols, they were pretty young. So I find it even hard to believe that they can consider themselves, veterans who received training a long time ago. But as you mentioned, they may have come in contact with others who perpetuated that same thing. And
Mm-hmm.
also last month, or in November or December, we passed a resolution with HR that I brought forth, joint resolution along with Shelby County Commissioner Charlie Caswell, to mandate ACEs training for all employees
Right.
of the
Adverse
city.
childhood experiences. Mm-hmm.
Yes. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So all city employees, because all of us at the city are considered front facing citizen engagement. What folks are doing at the city day to day impacts every single Memphian. And so I think that ACEs training is a good start for everyone, but especially applying that to our first responders.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that some police officers took the tenor of the council's discussions on reckless driving as maybe an excuse to be more aggressive? Because Scorpion was formed just as the council was having those discussions, and the discussion was, well, something needs to be done. We need to crack down on this.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that some police officers could have looked at that and said, okay, well, we got a license to do what we need to do out there?
I think so, but what we saw, Bill, was not anything of what you needed to do.
Mm-hmm.
No one could have took us saying we need to crack down on reckless driving, we need to crack down on dangerous driving, we need to crack down on those who are doing donuts and the such. None of that means be negligent in administering medical attention. None of that means dragging an individual out of their car and beating them. None of that means chasing an individual around the city. None of that means that. And so if that's the way that it's being interpreted, then it definitely needs to be a conversation that's revisited through training and by the leadership of our chief.
Right. And to be fair, the council discussion was much more nuanced than just you need to crack down on this. There was considerable discussion among council members about what exactly that means and what's going to be effective in eliminating that problem, and what is not going to be effective in
Right.
eliminating that problem.
Right. And all of what we saw from beginning to the end of the footage that was released, none of that had anything to do with what we were discussing.
Right. So you and other council members have seen this footage along with people here in Memphis, people across the country. Probably should ask this at the top, but what was your initial impression after you saw this?
I was confused. I was confused on why a lot of what we saw in the footage was not information we were privy to beforehand, whether as council folks, whether as Memphians, whether as just the public in general. I think the world has offered dozens more questions inquiring into why certain individuals were left out of the story in the beginning, why the fire department and the sheriff department had no knowledge of these individuals on the footage until the footage was released. I was very confused and also just shaken, and mourning and empathizing with the family on, not only are you losing your child, your family member, your brother, your father, as we learned he had a child, But you also have to do that on the world stage. Mm-hmm. And you have to do that in a way of where if you show anger, it's misinterpreted. If you show too much anguish, it's misinterpreted. If you're making demands, it's misinterpreted. You're scrutinized while grieving, and it's just not fair. And so that, along with just confused of why we were all left in the dark, and I don't know who's responsible for that. But those were my first first reactions after seeing the footage. And initially I wasn't going to view it. But I did decide to before the release to the public, because I felt as though it was going to do something more towards the way that I put forth action. And I was correct on my judgment for myself for that.
Mm-hmm. Right. Could what we are going through now, and the discussions primarily last into the spring when it becomes city budget season at City Hall? And if it does, do you think there will be discussions about the amount of funding in the city budget that goes to police?
Oh, definitely. I don't think this is a one council meeting thing. I think this is just the beginning of an ongoing discussion. This should be in the next budget season. This should be in the new mayor's debate. This is not something that is not a moment that's going to go away fast, because we've seen lingering effects of not fully addressing things head on. But as far as the budget, I know that there are some organizers are calling for a lack of better nuanced term, defund the police, which when people hear that, it's a trigger phrase, right? Mm-hmm. They think that you want to abolish or get rid of it, when really defund means to move around monies, which is what we do all the time, every day at city in local bureaucracy. So I think that there may be some talk or discussion about certain line items that may be eliminated. So like, for instance, whatever we were using on Scorpion units or other units, that definitely should be looked at and discussed. But also, how do we find money to give to the community co-ed line? How are we supporting our police clergy academy? Our neighborhood watches. So our Sky Cops, as we see, these were very effective in a sense. It didn't catch what we thought we were going to initially when they put it up. But I'm glad that we had it, because if we didn't, we wouldn't even know that side of the story. Mm-hmm. So I think that we'll see a lot of moving around of monies, as we do all the time in city budgeting. But I think that we would probably have a more emphasis on the police budget to just see actually what's getting funded as far as training and really helping our police officers hold true to what we would like them to hold true to, which is protecting and serving.
Mm-hmm. A final point. Does Chief Davis have your confidence at this point?
I think that we have no choice but to have put confidence in our chief. I think that from the beginning, she made good strides. As again, I don't know why we weren't privy to the rest of the information that was in the footage, but I won't put that on the chief by herself because she didn't act alone. So I don't know who to put that towards. I'm still upset about that. But she's been moving fast with terminations. I would like to see the latest officers that were terminated charged, Mr. Hemphill and others. But I mean, we have to have faith in her as a mother, as a now Memphian, and as our MPD chief. Her duty is to protect and serve as well. And so my faith is going to be that she's going to do that. And then if not, we can have a further discussion. But at this point, this is what we're expecting her to do.
All right. We've been talking with Memphis City Council member Michalyn Easter Thomas. I'm Bill Drees, and this has been On the Record.